Yeah,
So
what I've learned
pretty dope.
is that utility is secondary in this space to community in a lot of ways, because there is a lot of revolutionary projects out there, but they don't have the marketing, they don't have the community, they don't have the hype to sustain any type of exposure. I think it was Vitalik that said it the best. He was like, this was a while back. He said you could have mediocre technology and great marketing and succeed. You can have great technology and mediocre marketing and not succeed by any measure of a doubt. And what I see with Pulsechain is a successful amalgamation of both of that, because you have a community here that there's about 260 people in this space, and many of the speakers right now are developers for projects in the Pulsechain community. KDP, Jesse, Walrus, KG, Long Vacation. There's many people in here, even in the whatchamacallit, even in the listener section, that are building on Pulsechain, and that's why the fact that people are hosting the spaces a year and a half after, almost a year and well, actually, yeah, a year and a half after the sacrifice, and are still patient and haven't migrated and said screw it to this chain and just migrated to another technologically sufficient chain, it speaks a lot of volumes about the loyalty. And I think that loyalty is another principle that's undermined in this space.
Yeah, so
I agree with you.
the technological innovation, people only care because it's a narrative for price go up or because it changes the user experience. That's it. Everything else is just noise. It's not signal, right? So if technological innovation mattered or just low fees mattered, none of us would be on ETH. There's different layer twos, there's other solutions. That's not where everyone's at, right? So even the low fee component of Pulsechain gets underrated, because if you tell someone, hey, it's got low fees, they say, oh, well, lots of chains have low fees. Okay, how come you're not on XLM then? Because it's that you don't want cheap fees. You want your fees to be cheap. You want the transactions that you want to do cheap. No one cares about a cell phone plan that's free if you can't connect to the people you're trying to talk with. So the low fees on Pulsechain are substantially different than low fees on some network that you don't want to be on, because what you're trying to actually do is inexpensive. It's actually lowering the barrier to entry, not this just a kind of a commercial pitch saying the fees are inexpensive. Like, who
Oh,
cares? I don't want to
absolutely.
use those other chains. So our fees being low for things you do want to participate with matter much more than just comparing on a stat sheet between L1s. It's not that our fees are cheap. It's that the fees are cheap on things you already want to do.
Exactly. And if this space was valued by market capitalization on the basis of the metric of utility and innovation, the top 10 would look very different. Bitcoin would, in my opinion, and I have nothing wrong with Bitcoin, but just from a technological standpoint, Bitcoin would not be the top currency. It just wouldn't be. It's slow, it's outdated, and yeah, the Lightning Network is great, but it's not a viable means for a payment option right now. So when it comes to this market trying to determine the proposition of what defines market capitalization, what defines value, utility, I would dare say, is a secondary component to that notion of adoption. Like, you see meme coins that have absolutely no function whatsoever in the top 50, and it's because people go where they want to go in regards to hype, utility, hype, and value proposition. It's just the law of the land when it comes to commerce and markets.
I just want to add that I think Walrus made a like critical point that like Pulse will connect people to things that they want to do, like things that they actually want to participate in, as opposed to you made some good references there of like a phone or like XLM or whatever it may be. They don't want to use some obscure chain, and then there's like 10 wallets for that meme token that are using that chain. No one added liquidity, and they're bridging over in the forest of no man's land. Or they can just come over to Pulse and voila, good to go. Here, check out this cool Dex. Oh, guess what? We're doing this. Oh, guess what? This sick ass community. And this is coming from someone who's like, I didn't even know anything. I didn't know. This is just my first time hearing about you guys talk about Pulse. I don't know shit about Pulse. Nor do I have Hex, but I do know that the community's strong. And again, like the community, like you said, Corey, like they'll drive up whatever they want to drive up. And like you said, also, if it was just based off of utility, it'd be a very different top 100. I agree. And that's coming from someone who mines
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin. Like,
Yeah,
that's coming from
exactly.
someone who mines Bitcoin. Like, if it was just based off utility, Bitcoin would be in the shitter, right?
I
So,
agree.
ain't nobody wants to spend their appreciating asset, right? Like, so it's funny because many projects just got stuck in the gutter. They did not have movement. They had aspirations and plans that could not be. They were neither feasible nor viable, but they were desirable. Now Pulse can connect them to that feasibility, the viability that they ever so desired. It's going to be exciting.
And look at, for example, and then I'll shut up. I promise. Look at the three projects right now that are up here. Actually, two, because I think KG stepped down. But I'm going to use the two for example. Liquid Loans is basically creating a massive DeFi suite for the entirety of Pulse Chain with a stablecoin. Power City, one thing they're doing out of many is creating a platform where basically Pulse Chain becomes a layer zero where it's interconnected with 60 different other chains. I don't believe in isolationism when it comes to blockchains. I believe if you're an isolated blockchain, you're going to end up getting left behind in the long run. If you want to talk about mass adoption, there has to be some type of ecosystem where there is some direct consolidation of chains where it's not this chain has this chain has that. There has to be dApps that create a multi-chain ecosystem. That's why I think I'm very surprised that interoperability has not taken off like it should has for, like, for example, like, let's just say, I don't know, Cosmos or Polkadot or one of those type of things. But it appears now that blockchains are not going to be the harbingers of interoperability. It seems like decentralized applications are going to fill that void. And I think, Power City's first example kind of embodies that notion. I forget, what is it called, Katie? Is the company just called Multi-Chain? Is that what it's called?
We partnered with Multi-Chain to utilize
That's
their
what's called.
routing network, but
Okay.
we aren't Multi-Chain. We're just building off their network.
Okay, but still, that provides immense value because it brings people from other chains interconnected into one, I guess you could say, sphere of influence between different chains. That I think people really undermine the future of interoperability, and I'm very surprised it hasn't become a massive narrative or trend in 2023. So I'll shut up now.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
we
not
There's actually a
that
reason.
massive.
There's
Hey,
there's actually a
Katie.
reason.
Oh, Johnny's in the house. Let's go, Johnny. Okay, let's just bump on in. Let's go. The cougar called Johnny, so let's just go.
There's the reason for that is, Corey, because a lot of these chains are not as built out as you believe them to be. They ran into a lot of this problem when they were even trying to pull data from the chains. Just for the Pulse chain sacrifices alone, there was a lot of issues with getting the interconnectivity to those chains. So it's not that people haven't thought of doing it before. Just so far, it's been very difficult because these things are written in different code, and they're not all that compatible. So what it sounds like Multi-Chain is doing is trying to find a way to make these things compatible, and I'll be interested to see how that turns out. But unfortunately, what's been discovered along this whole journey with Pulse is the fact that a lot of these things are not, you can't even pull data from them. It's been a nightmare. So that's the reason for that. Walrus has got his hand up. Ghost Speaker's got his, everyone's got their hand up the second I come in. So go ahead, guys. Don't let me interrupt.
Well, I mean, the nice thing about trying to build additional bridges on the Pulse chain is to connect it to all these places so that not everybody has to go through Ethereum. Not everybody has to go through one door to get to the chain. We want to make as many doors onto the chain as possible. Working with Multi-Chain is going to open the door to 26 blockchains, 30 additional bridges, 60 decentralized exchanges, over 15,000 tokens to swap in and out of, right? So opening the door for pretty much the rest of crypto as we know it to be able to now participate in Pulse Chain and building other projects, as we have hundreds of projects from different teams being developed for Pulse Chain right now, giving them a reason to come, giving them a reason to want to utilize the system, right? And I know Gokhshtein was mentioning before about utility. A great example is, Power City worked with Boxable Boxable as a company is going to launch an NFT collection on Pulse Chain representing tiny homes that can be bought and sold there as an NFT. That you can take an NFT and be able to use that as basically the right to have a tiny home manufactured and shipped to you somewhere in the world. This is new concept.
That is
New
huge.
concepts that are being implemented here on Pulsechain, new things that you're not seeing anywhere else. We're bringing utility to Pulsechain, and there's a lot of teams doing that. Power City is one of them, but there's a lot of teams doing that. And this is the differentiator, right? Once you have this route that all these people can come across all these bridges and all these routes to get the Pulsechain, and they find that there's new interesting stuff and unique stuff that's there. Oh, and low gas fees. Oh, and a copy of all my stuff came over too. Wow, let's play around. Let's do something new, right? This is this is the differentiator.
Is that boxable thing for real, or is that a hypothetical?
No, it's for real. It's a deal that Power City has been working with Boxable on, and right now we're just waiting for Pulsechain to launch to be able to see that come to fruition. So
That's a big.
meanwhile,
That's
Boxable has over
amazing.
100. Yeah, I mean they have over 100,000 people in their production queue. They're building a second production facility outside Las Vegas, where they just did. And they'll be, building a new priority queue just for these NFTs. So, it's a great example of, again, utility and new things being brought to Pulsechain specifically that people can experience.
It's not even just an example. It's like a whale. I mean, the whole world, the whole country knows Boxable. So it's a great brand association for Pulsechain through Power City. Fantastic! Congratulations.
Yeah, and real quick, LV, like, do you know how much longer you guys are out on the Boxables? And I'm sorry, I'll get with you, Goshenstein. I'm sorry, your name is so long. I know your hand's up, so you are next. I'm so sorry, but LV, do you know much longer?
Really, it's more of a question around when we see Pulsechain launch, right? That's the big question that everyone's waiting
Absolutely.
for.
Okay.
As far as seeing what multi-chain is going to do and how the bridge works out, we really need a V3 of testnet, right? So we get a V3 of test chain, right, with changes. And once we see that, then multi-chain can start building that bridge, setting up their nodes and connecting the dots in there in a testnet environment. So, baby steps, but that's kind of what we're waiting for.
Yeah. And your Boxable homes, by the way, is fabulous. So yeah. So if y'all don't know about the Boxable homes, please look it up. It's awesome. I've seen them. They're amazing. You can put your wife or your husband in one, like in your backyard, if they're in the doghouse. Just saying. So go ahead, Goshstein. Go ahead.
Can I sneak in there real quick, CZ? My hand dropped when I didn't want to cut off LV. I'll just get my last word in real quick. So that combination of like the community along with the tech, like there's a reason that you see this like rug pull nature on BSC, right? Like you see Bitcoin guys are all like 2A and carnivores, ETH has its 5. There's a very particular community here on Pulsechain, and that ethos like resonates in all the projects. Like when you look across this room, like I've spoke with Jesse, probably at least once a week for who knows how long. I've met his wife. CZ's invited me into her home. I know her husband as well. I've spoke to Corey ever since he's been in the community for like 2 years. Me and LV have shared an old fashioned. Bullish down here has taken my phone call anytime I ever needed it for help with like media stuff. Mando, me and him have hung out in Vegas. I mean, the list goes on and on through these people. So there's not just a strength of community, but also like a level of congruence. Like there is not a single person in this room that's really building on the space that is going to tell you anything other than self-custody. They're going to tell you security first. They're going to tell you to take a long-term view on being in crypto. Like you're going to see it throughout everything. There's particular nature about how we feel about admin keys. There's a certain way we feel about transparency. There's a lot of commonality in the way we build and the way the community cares about each other that is resonant in how these things build and what gets built. So you see this with everything. Like there's a level of how the community and some of that just emotional energy of people ends up defining what gets built and what ends up being profitable and what ends up being successful, and the level of congruence and it sounds funny, just teamwork between the people here trying to build something special will not be seen anywhere else.
I'll be brief. So I just wanted to say I agree with Corey. I've always been looking towards interoperability. I really want interoperability to come in because that's key. And when it comes to the gaming sector, obscurity is going to play a big role. Tech just hidden, nicely tucked away as the user experience just flows and they're not disrupted. I like the car analogy that like you go in a car, there's conventions and design principles that align no matter what car you go in. People don't need to be a mechanic to start driving the car, turn on the car, gas pedal, brake, steering, those design principles. And then the last thing I just wanted to ask was what does like a timeline look like for Pulse? Like, is it just a lot of testing stages that it's in? Like, what is like kind of like the roadmap look like for like the average user who's like, is it coming out this year, end of this year? Is it like next year? What does that look like for Pulse?
Oh,
Katie
gosh,
with the hand
dang.
up. You want to go ahead and do this, Miss Host?
Now you're talking about a topic that is extremely controversial in our community. One of our devs did speculate Q2 quite a fair few months ago. So I've stuck quite closely by Q2 because he is an extremely smart little person. The recent Git lab movements kind of suggested the fact that there was local testing with Pulsex towards the Pulse execution node. So that is a good indicator that the execution layer could be finalized within Pulse itself. So the supply increase changes to the endpoints and the explorers could be done. So to me, it does seem like they are in testing phases. One of their devs spoke at the Hex conference on the first day, and she did suggest that they were in battle testing at the moment. So I'm still strongly sticking by V3 in this month by the end of January and launch towards Q2. But again, I could be wrong. I'm just basing it off things that I keep seeing around. It is an extremely controversial topic in our community. If you were to send out just one post that said, when's Pulse Chain launch? Absolutely everybody would get underneath and be like, 2 more weeks, 2 weeks, bro, 2 weeks. So
I'm all for the mid-May.
just mid-May, wrong year.
Mid-May, wrong year. It's either mid-May this year or it's going to be next year. But whatever it's going to
Oh my
be, it's going to
God,
be
it's always
mid-May
gonna
because
be
Richard likes
May.
to
It's
be
always
right.
gonna be May, right? It's
It's
always
going to
gonna be
be May.
Johnny. Anyway, I think it's gonna be February. Just saying.
When they announced the fork of ETH 2.0 versus the original Binance kind of Frankenstein fork, that was around the time that our dev said Q2, just based off the porting of ETH tooling and other additional factors that you have to take into consideration when forking ETH, especially ETH 2.0. So I'm still sticking with Q2.
Well,
And consider whenever, sorry, Susie,
No, go ahead.
whenever V3 actually drops, right? It is so different. We're
Right, but
probably going
isn't
to
that
need,
shit supposed to drop like this month or next month? Once that fucking launches, isn't that fact that that's when Pulse Chain's gonna launch? Like, what the fuck? I'm hearing so much stuff. Come on,
well,
LV, tell me the spill.
you're probably going to need 2 to 3 months at least of a test net because it is entirely different. And to be able to stand up a full archive node, it will literally take about 30 to 40 days to synchronize that in full, unless you're trying to do some work to keep a node kind of primed with current Ethereum mainnet data. So, there's a lot of time required just to get the nodes up and running and get those working. And then for all these protocols and everything to relaunch on an entirely new network, right?
Okay.
Once we see testnet, my assumption is probably 2 to 3 months minimum from there, but that's just me.
I agree with the testing, LV. I
I
just
do
wanted
too.
to point out. I wanted to point out for people in the room that don't understand what an archive node is. Archive nodes are extremely important because they are what's going to pull the data that's being forked over. So without an archive node, you can't see the 30,000 NFT collections. So the archive nodes are an extremely important and crucial part to this whole entire ecosystem. So whether it's the Pulse Chain devs and Richard Hart that are deploying archive nodes, or whether it's projects themselves that are deploying the archive nodes for their applications. So like NFT marketplaces kind of need to deploy those archive nodes to have that data onto their platforms. So they're extremely crucial.
Something to consider because, I hear a lot of people and I understand that we want to build more and we want to build. But keep in mind, Ethereum launched with 0 applications. Okay. Everything starts from nothing, right? we have a lot of expectations on everything being like all this stuff all at once. And the way Pulse is being built is, yes, we've got a minimum viable product, which means we need certain things. Why are we going with the EVM compatible chain? Well, we're going with the EVM compatible chain. Why? Because we want such things like stables, like dexes, like, we want our own on ramps. So there are certain things that we do actually need to make it, not a ghost chain. Okay. An example of that would be without bridges. Okay. And without fiat on ramps, you end up with like ETH Welfare and ETH Walmart. Okay. They're basically test nets because nobody's built anything over there yet in order to make them fully functional. And we have some of the apps already over there that actually do interact with it. And a large amount of their volume is us using our secondary applications that are geared towards those chains. The problem is trying to get in and out of them, right? But just keep in mind, why we're all excited about all of these things launching. ETH launched with 0 applications on it, and it went from having 0 applications to being a coin that's the second in market cap and was valued at over $5,000 at one point in time. Okay. The other thing I wanted to address, because Corey was talking about community, look at us guys. Right now, we've got this Twitter space running right now. Same time, we have this running. The Hex online conference is going on. And I just saw like 3 other Hex channels are running shows right now. So if people think if they don't understand how strong our community is, all they need to do is take a look.
This is some knowledge that I mean, the alpha is insane. We have so many people in here that are spreading the alpha, spreading the knowledge. I'm learning. I'm learning.